So today I am talking with Alaine Buchanan, and we have been friends for a really long time, and we went to Evangel University together. And so I asked Alaine to talk about some things that are going on in her life, and the fact that she is a doctor of
philosophy, and it's in Jewish history and literature from about 500 BC to about 100 AD. So it includes Old Testament, New Testament, and everything written outside of that.
Oh, awesome. Wow. So just saying, she's just very smart. And so we've been friends forever. And so she is a woman in ministry. She speaks to tons of people, and now she's living in Hawaii with her husband and her son. So Alaine, thank you for talking with me and sharing a little bit of your time and your life with all of us as well. So let's talk. How did you decide to get into this line of work? How did that happen? How did that come about?
That's a really, really interesting story. So my husband is an active duty Army chaplain, and my goal in life was to become a staff pastor focused on evangelism and discipleship. And when I met my husband, and after we got married, I was told over and over and over again that I would never, ever be able to be on a pastoral staff. And that I was going to have to find a different line of work because we move so often. In my last year at seminary, different professors had said, "Have you considered teaching?" And I said, "No, actually, I hadn't, because growing up, it was always about the church. It wasn't about teaching or doing anything else." Mm-hmm. So fortunately, after I graduated, I was able to start teaching at Evangel University right away in their Bible and theology department. And through a series of situations, conversations, meetings, all of those different types of things, I ended up doing a presentation at a regional meeting for Bible scholars through the Society of Biblical Literature. And there are a variety of people there. It doesn't matter what someone's religious background is. If they teach something religious, they can be part of this organization. So I did a presentation there. And then they always have a question and answer time at the end. And so one gentleman stood up and asked a question, basically asked what my opinion was on God in the Old Testament and whether or not he had a wife.
Oh, wow.
And it was about Asherah worship. So were the people of Israel, did they view God as having a wife? The Canaanite goddess Asherah. And so I answered the question to the best of my ability. And then what happened afterwards is several of the people who were in this room came up and started sharing their stories about how they had grown up in church and about how they had asked really difficult questions in church. The majority of them had been kicked out of church and just had really, really dealt with a lot of difficult things in their teen years. And so because of that, because the church was not a safe place for them to ask questions, they went through the academic system, because in the academy and the university and up from there, that's a safe place to ask questions and to discover how to research and to find and discover things. So that's the route that many of them went. And it's because the church rejected them. So a week after that, one of the professors at Evangel called me into his office and said that he had just gotten off the phone with one of the professors who was there. And he basically said this gentleman was too embarrassed to call you himself, but he has been doing scholarship longer than I had been alive, and I was 28 at the time. Mm-hmm. And he said, and this gentleman decided that he was going to give God and the church another chance.
Oh, wow.
And so he said, "I don't know what you have planned for your life, but I strongly suggest that you go and pursue PhD studies." So that's why I did it.
Wow. Wow. That's an incredible story. That is like, oh my goodness. That's life-changing for him, but then also it changed your, your journey and the trajectory of where you were going. So that's really interesting. So fast forward, you went through the PhD program.
I did.
And you pursued it. And so tell me, how was your road to getting there? Because you're a woman doing
Yes.
in something that, mostly men, I mean, for the most part have done and are doing. And there's not a lot of women going this path. So how has your road been going through that as a woman?
Well, as a woman, as a follower of Jesus, and as a wife, all of that stuff combined, as a minister, it was by far the most difficult thing that I've had to do in my life so far, and that's because, as you said, there aren't very many people in my particular field, and there's even fewer women involved in my particular field. So I faced a lot of hurdles, a lot of obstacles, a lot of rejection in every area of my life. Every relationship that I had at the beginning of my PhD program, something happened with every single one of them. Some of those relationships are still intact, but they look a lot different. Some of those relationships have been severed, not by my choice and not by my desire. But, a lot of times I think when people do something that we don't understand, it's easier for us to just completely reject the person rather than to ask questions. And that's what happened a lot with me. So, in every context of my life, family, friends, school itself, my academic career, ministry, the church, in every facet of life, I faced some sort of rejection. But I always believed, and I always knew that God had called me to do this. And I knew that I was supposed to be pursuing this. And then near the end of my program, to make a really, really long story short, I had finished my dissertation. My chair had approved my dissertation, and it went to my committee. Normally, what happens is once the chair has approved a dissertation, the committee approves it as well. Then you do your oral defense, you do the edits that you have to do, turn it in, and you're done. But my story is a bit different than that, because my chair did approve my dissertation and went to my committee. They were a couple of weeks late in getting back to me, and when they got back to me, they basically said that I was going to have to redo the majority of my dissertation, that I had failed my dissertation, and that I was just going to have a lot of work to do at that point if I wanted to succeed. And because I had gone through so much difficulty, because so many relationships in my life had gone through difficult things, immediately when I got, there was a series of 3 emails, and as soon as I got the 3rd email, it was like everything in my life just went cold. And went dark. I had always believed that Jesus was with me. I had never, ever doubted the presence of God in my life. But at that moment, I knew, or I thought I knew, and I believed that God had left me. There was no peace. There was no, here's what I want you to do. I mean, there was nothing. It was just complete silence. And all I felt and all I heard were all the negative things people had said to me, all of my own, negative thoughts that I might have felt about myself. And I remember calling out to Jesus time and time and time again, and there was nothing. And, I can go through a lot of things in life, but I can't go through life without Jesus. I just can't. And since I thought that Jesus had abandoned me, I thought, well, what's the point in living? What's the point in continuing to try? And I had never, ever, ever thought that I would find myself in that spot. Never in a million years. And, fortunately, I chose not to take my life, and I'm so thankful for that now. So incredibly thankful for that now. And there were a few people who stepped in and kind of, gave some insight and some help, because I felt like I was in over my head at that point. I went and pursued some counseling. I've always been a huge advocate for counseling. And honestly, if someone's in a situation where they just don't know what to do, definitely pursue counseling. So I did that because I didn't, I honest to God, for the first time in my life, had no idea what to do. And that was a good little over 2.5 years ago that happened. And I did choose to continue pursuing my PhD. There were a number of other obstacles that happened as well. Most of which were out of my control. But last summer, the summer of 2016, I finally finished everything.
Wow.
It was totally God. I mean, God stepped in and did so many, oh my goodness, so many different things to make things happen. And then after that, the healing process started, and it's been good. It's been hard, but it's been really, really good.
Wow. So where are you teaching now?
Where am I teaching now? I teach here in Hawaii at Pacific Rim Christian University. I teach in their seminary. I teach one class for Evangel University, our alma mater. And then I also teach for School of Urban Missions, Bible College, and Theological Seminary. So I teach in their undergraduate and graduate programs.
So what are the biggest things you have learned since you've gone through all of this? What are some of the, let's say 3 tips or 3 learnings that, that you say, I did this and this is the best thing, and I know that this can help someone else. So what are some learnings that you've experienced?
The first thing I would do is say it is totally okay and appropriate to be honest about where we're at and about what we're going through. And if we need to ask for help, we should, because life was never meant to be lived in isolation. We were meant for community. We were meant for relationship. So definitely that would be one thing. Mm-hmm. The second thing, there was a long grieving process as part of the healing process. And we have to allow ourselves to go through grieving whenever there's a major loss or a major change. And that's okay. And that's appropriate. In the midst of that, though, find some people who love you just because you're you, and rely on those relationships. Because grieving, it doesn't look the same forever. It shifts and it changes. So, find people who you can trust and who can actually just walk with you and just be with you in that process. And then the third thing is forgiveness. Forgiveness. And there are some people who will never apologize for the things that they've said or the things that they've done. But we have to get to the point where we're willing to get on that journey towards forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't a one-time deal. It takes a long time in some situations. And for some situations, it may take our entire lifetime. But it's important to get on that road towards working towards forgiveness.
Yeah. I think within the last couple of years, I've been really, really kind of studying and thinking about lamenting. It's the lost art of lamenting, just really allowing yourself to grieve change, however big or small, but allowing yourself to grieve it. I mean, you're not to live in it and live there, put up an apartment building or anything like that, but allow yourself that time. And in this day and age, we just don't, everything is so fast, so we don't have time to do that. But that's such an important point, so be honest, grieve your change or lament, and then forgive. I love that. I love those points. That's really, really helpful. So so this past week, I mean, I follow you on Facebook, so I looked and I saw that you've been teaching out, and so someone was able to kind of film you teaching and stuff. So how has that been, being able to go around and preach? How has that been as a woman in ministry? Let's add that little caveat there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually something that is a little bit more recent in my life. And I believe that happened because over the summer I was invited to be a Bible study hour teacher at one of the Assemblies of God district family camps. So it was the Montana district family camp. And I've always been the type of person that I think if you need to go to the altar, you go to the altar regardless of what the altar call is. And I just really felt before I started my teaching sessions that I just needed to go up and just needed to pray and just deal with some things. And in that time, I saw myself, I've always been a very visionary dream type person. I saw myself holding on to this string. And this string was like the last thing I was holding on to from this long journey of getting a PhD. And I remember talking to Jesus and I said, Jesus, you've got to find a way to cut this thing. I don't want to hold on to it anymore. I don't even really know what it is anymore. And he told me to look at my other hand, and there was a pair of scissors there. And he said, you have to cut this yourself. And I said, well, what's going to happen if I cut this string? And he said, that's when the journey begins, and that's when you step and you jump into the unknown, and that's when you watch me do the things that I want to do with your life.
Wow. Wow.
And so I cut that string, and which to me was very scary. But I cut that string, and from that point on, I tell you what, speaking at that camp, there were times where I literally felt the Spirit of God in the room. It had been 2.5 years since I had really felt God moving, or sensed God moving while I was speaking. And since that time, I mean, there's just been opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. And it's like everything that I used to be, everything that used to make me who I was, that has been enhanced now because of the things that I've been through. And also because of that, more opportunities are opening up all the time to speak, to preach, to invest. And I am just so incredibly grateful. I mean, opportunities that I never, ever would have thought of or imagined are starting to open up. And I am just so grateful to God for those things.
And I think that's because you were open to it, of course. I mean, you kind of said, you cut the string and allowed him to really, be your lead. So that's pretty awesome. So I've been noticing too, that there are a lot, I mean, I'm hearing of a lot of women in ministry. Why do you think this is a sudden shift? I mean, are you hearing the same thing? I mean, I see a lot of women rising up and I love it. I am all about it. So why do you think the sudden shift in our society?
I love it too. And I think that there's a number of elements involved in this. First, I think that there are more women who God is raising up to be public voices, not just for women, but for people as a whole. And I think as we see more women stepping up and God using a variety of women, that helps other women realize, oh, well, if God is doing this with so-and-so, maybe God can do this with me too. I also think that we're doing a better job of allowing Scripture to speak for itself and allowing for Scripture to speak within its context. Because all of Scripture, yes, it's inspired by God, it's also written by people, and it's written about people, and it's written for people. And once we realize that, once we start digging into the context of Scripture and understanding a little bit better about what's going on, that opens up a whole new world of opportunities for people if they're open to learning those things. And so I think we're seeing those things happen over and over and over again. I also think that in particular fathers who have daughters who are called to ministry, many of them are starting to shift and change their minds about women in ministry because their daughters or another woman in their life is called to ministry and is evident by the fruits that they have to offer. So this is a very, very exciting time to be a follower of Jesus, to be in ministry, and to watch what God is doing in and through a variety of women and men too throughout the world. It's just a very exciting time.
It is a good time. It is a good time. Wow. Yeah. So how do you prepare when you're putting together, this is like a total shift. How do you prepare when you're putting together a sermon? What are some of the things that you do to get started?
Well, I pray, as everybody should. But then part of it depends on the context of the audience. And it depends on really what the leaders of the church or of the ministry or of the organization, what they're wanting. But what I'll do is I normally will pick one passage of scripture. I don't go all over scripture in my sermons. I just pick one passage normally. And what I'll do is I'll take a look at the historical cultural context. That's what I love. That's my passion, is the historical cultural context. So I'll take a look at that. You know, what's going on behind the passage? Who are these people? What's going on in their lives? You know, why would this person, whoever wrote this, say this or write this? And why would they put it right here in scripture? So I take a look at that. I take a look at the literary context. So what's happening before and after the passage to get a better idea of what's going on. And then I will just, I am a hands-on person, so I'll just take the passage, I'll print it out on a piece of paper, or I'll use my computer and type it out, and I'll just, I don't want to say manipulate the text, but I'll move the words of the text around some just to help me get a better idea of what's going on in that passage itself. So I'll combine those three things together, and that normally gives a good foundation for a sermon, for a paper, for anything along that line. I actually have a YouTube video on discourse analysis, and that's something that I do regularly in my sermon prep and in teaching prep, and really in everything prep.
Oh, so. That's awesome. Yeah, those are practical tips. That's really great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything else you would like to talk about women in ministry, or just kind of your path to how you got to kind of where you are, and then maybe where you are right now and what you're doing?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm noticing now in this season of life, probably more so than in previous seasons of life, is that everything that is good that is happening in my life is because of relationship with other people. You know, there are some things that are happening now in my life that are happening because of relationships that I had when I was a child. You know, some of those things are happening because of relationships that have just been built in the last couple of months, or maybe even a couple of weeks. And so really, relationship with God, that is vitally, vitally important. But it's important for us to build relationship for the sake of building relationship, because we love people and because we care about people. You know, any opportunities, anything that happens, that's a side effect. That's not, you know, that's not the purpose. That's not the function. Building relationships. But I'm noticing that because trust has been earned with different people, that those opportunities for ministry are happening. So in this season of life right now, I'm doing a lot of teaching. I'm starting to do some writing, doing some more public speaking. And all of that is due to what God has done and what God is doing in my life. In regards to women in ministry, we have a generation of young ladies coming up, and oh my goodness, they are on fire. They are excited. They just need people in their lives to help guide them and give them a little bit of direction when they need it, when they ask for it.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing that all of us need to do now is to not just seek out relationships from people who are further along than us, but when we find people, or when people mention to us, hey, this person is feeling a call or a pull to ministry, well, then that's our opportunity to just step in and say, hey, I've been there. I understand some of these things. If you ever need or want to talk, let me know. I'm here for you. Because that's something that I never had growing up. And, even being a young woman in ministry, I never, ever, ever had that. And so I think we have an opportunity to do things that may not have ever been done for us. And I think if we can do that, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, totally with you on that. I was writing out things. So like, I'm no longer on staff at a church, which I was in full-time church ministry for about 25 years or something like that. And I'm no longer doing that right now currently, but I was writing out some of the things that I wish I had done quicker in my ministry. And one of them was mentoring young women faster. And I think a lot of times women don't mentor other women because they feel like, oh, she's going to take my place and there won't be any room for me, and that's the scarcity, abundance kind of, the not abundance kind of thinking, and so towards the end and kind of, maybe 5 or 6 years in, I realized that there's going to be room for everybody. And that is the big lie, I think, that we believe sometimes, that there's not going to be any room. So ladies, if you see another young woman, take her in your house, take her under your wing. I mean, just talk and just be there for them so that they could grow and move the gospel faster and further. So yeah, I totally with you on that one. Absolutely. That's a good word. So how can people find you? So as we're wrapping up, how can people find you online and all that stuff so that they can talk to you if they wish to?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I have my own personal page, and I also have a public page. So people can find me on Facebook and friend me there. I also have a website, www.alainebuchanan.com. Again, that's www.alainebuchanan.com, ALAINE. So those are two ways. Those are probably the best ways to find me and to get in touch with me.
Awesome. Well, Alaine, thank you so much for spending time with me and talking about your life and kind of what led you to this point, and from despair on to joy. And so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jenae. It's so good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Have a great day.
All right, you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.